In February 2020, when COVID-19 found its way into Nigeria, many hoped and prayed that the disease would find its way out in a short while, just like Ebola in 2014. Unfortunately, the virus moved steadily from its latest pattern to community transmission. Well, a year and 2 months after, the virus is still here. However, with a combination of social and community responses, the nation has been able to limit its spread to a little above 165,000 confirmed cases and fatalities to 2,067. On Panorama today, we will assess the nation's response so far and way forward, especially with new deadlier variants of the virus lurking around neighboring countries. This is Panorama, coming to you live from the Lagos Network Center of the Nigerian Television Authority. I am Adeola Komi Akere. French President Emmanuel Macron Monday evening hosted visiting heads of state and government attending the Africa-France summit to a dinner. State House correspondent Adamu Sambo reports that President Muhammadu Buhari was among those accorded befitting reception on arrival at the French seat of government, otherwise called Elysee Palace. Cameras were, however, not allowed into the dinner hall. President Buhari and his host are expected to hold bilateral discussions on areas of common interest on Tuesday before the Africa-France summit. And still on the Africa-Nigeria-France relations, Paris is working on a new and fairer way to engage with Africa, especially as it looks to expand its bilateral relationship with Nigeria, the biggest economy on the continent. Adebola Brooksland Sunday reports that the bilateral relations between Nigeria and France, especially in the area of security, trade, and culture, is dated back to the 60s.
In sub-Saharan Africa, records have it that Nigeria is France's top commercial partner, with bilateral trade between the two countries nearing $5 billion in 2019. However, this figure fell to $2.3 billion in 2020 due to the advent of coronavirus pandemic. The bilateral relations have continued, particularly in the sectors of economy and culture, in addition to France's support against terrorism in the Lake Chad region after the Paris summit in May 2014. In 2015, President Muhammadu Buhari made an official visit to France, during which he met with President Hollande on issues related to security and the environment, tagged COP21. The Hollande successor, President Macron, visited Nigeria in July 2018, where he met with President Buhari, with whom he discussed regional issues, the G5 Sahel, and anti-terrorism efforts. It was a kind of homecoming for Emmanuel Macron, as he had his internship in Nigeria's French embassy when he was 23 years old.
It's very emotional to me to come back something like 15 to 17 years later, especially in Abuja, where I spent a few months.
Another area which France and Nigeria's cooperation is extensive is the creative industry, creating a partnership with French Canal Olympia Cinema.
Because we know that Nigeria is a country with a very vibrant, very important culture, and this is especially the case in the film industry.
It is essential for Nigerians to learn this language, that we have teachers who are well skilled in teaching learners or would-be learners.
The African Finance Summit is expected to put in place financial resources capable of reviving the economy of the continent. Adebola Brooksland Sunday, NTA News.
Latest figures from the Nigeria Center for Disease Control as at the 17th of May shows that 69 new cases of the coronavirus have been recorded in 4 states of the Federation, bringing the total number of confirmed cases to 165,778 in Nigeria. Out of the new infections, Ondo State topped the list with 35 new cases, while Lagos State has 30 new cases, Rivers has 3, and the FCT case, 156,415 persons have been discharged, and sadly 2,067 deaths have been recorded across the country. Being the epicenter of the coronavirus pandemic in Nigeria, Lagos State has returned to the drawing board as efforts are not only directed to the reactivation of preventive measures, but restructuring of existing ones to complement the strategies put in place by the federal government. Significant among the tactics is ramping up testing and deployment of a co-telemedicine team to the Murtala Muhammed International Airport to spot out passengers with suspicious COVID-19 cases. Michael Olaleye reports.
The metropolitan nature of Lagos, coupled with its population size of more than 20 million people, make the task of managing infectious diseases tricky. Although government is expanding its containment system, but the nonchalant disposition of some Lagosians is frustrating the winning formula, especially now that the wind breezing around Indian is worrisome.
I stood at the BRT bus stop there and counted 100. Out of that 100, less than 15 had a nose mask. And of those 15, about 9 were wearing it on their chins. So only about 6 out of 100. And that is potentially dangerous.
Vaccination has long been touted as the magical dose to break the chain of the infection. But the reason why people consciously lose their guard is still unclear, simply because Lagos State, for instance, has only vaccinated 10% of its huge population.
We recently discovered that those who have had antibodies to the virus during the first wave, some of them have lost the antibody before the commencement of vaccination. So really, it made them unprotected. And that means that a second infection can
Country from a possible third wave is across the border, reason why government is strengthening surveillance at the nation's airports to guard against the importation of the dreaded variants.
We're developing the capacity to do the mutant PCR, which means it will not only pick up COVID, but it will be able to tell us which COVID, which of the mutations are circulating in the world that anybody who is positive for COVID is now carrying in Lagos State. We still have 14 million people to vaccinate, and we need to hit what's called 60% of the population have received the vaccine, which will be one of our key strategies to mitigate a third wave.
There is no gainsaying the fact that Nigeria is combining previous lessons on dealing with infectious diseases in activating its red alertness for a possible third wave of the coronavirus pandemic. But where the pendulum will sway will be determined by the readiness of the people to adhere to safety measures. In Lagos, Michael Olaleye, NTA News.
Now, to throw more light on the way forward and how we can conquer the COVID-19 virus is Philip Njemanza, Professor of Neuroscience. Hello, Professor Philip. Thank you for joining us on Panorama today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Now, let's go straight to the issue of the day. It's been over a year now since COVID-19 found its way into Nigeria. How do you think Nigeria has fared in the fight against the spread of the virus?
Over 165,000 cases and a lot of recoveries, over 155,000. I think on the whole, given the population of Nigeria, we have fared very well so far. But one must remark that we are not in the pandemic belt. The pandemic belt is the belt of low humidity and low temperature, which is from 30 degrees north to 50 degrees north, across from Western Europe, from the whole west of America down to the eastern part, China and all these areas in that pandemic belt. So the physical constraints of weather, here we have high humidity, we have high temperature, so the transmissibility of the virus is very low. So that has helped us a lot. Now, what we have mostly are transported cases from people coming in and out from abroad into the country, and then some local spread, community spread. So we have done very well so far with the disease statistics. But this now provides an opportunity because we are not structurally ready for this disease condition. Our health system is not strong enough to withstand the very strong spread of the pandemic. And this is why we need to do a real structural adjustment of the whole health system from the colonial structure we have now to a modern structure, because all health systems, for them to be functional, must have three arms. And these three arms are interdependent, quite all right, but they are independent also from the point of view of their structure. You must have a treatment arm that treats diseases. These are the network of hospitals, both private and public. Then you must have a whole prophylactic arm at all levels of government, at the federal level, the state level, the local government level, even up to the ward level. You're supposed to have surgeon generals at all these levels who want disease. What they do is disease prevention, to tell people what to eat, how to go about things, to control water, control air, to dictate infection, outbreaks at the very early stage. This whole system is equally as important and as big as the normal treatment section. Then there is the arm of research. We still don't have a national research granting agency up to this time. Every nation should have it. We should have had the Nigerian equivalent of the National Institutes of Health, like in the United States. These institutes of health should be giving grants both to private and public organizations so that we will start researching on this very, very early. We should be able, Nigeria should be able to have a vaccine of our own making way before this pandemic. So we should now start preparing. I think the seed fund of over 100 billion at least should be made available to start the Nigerian Institutes of Health immediately as a response to this pandemic.
Okay, Professor.
We have to also have
Hello, Professor.
Bank. We don't have a health bank in this, where you can give single interest loans to private hospitals to establish and expand their hospitals. These are the real structural changes we need now in response to this pandemic.
Okay, all right, Prof. I'm very sure that all you have enumerated is being worked on by the authorities in charge. Now, you talked about the vaccination. The next question is, vaccination is said to be the only means for now of preventing fatality from the disease, and yet only less than 1% of Nigerian population has been vaccinated. Is this good enough? How can we get more people to take the vaccine?
Well, I wouldn't qualify that that vaccination is the only way of preventing fatalities. We have been doing treatment of COVID without vaccination thus far. So it wouldn't be correct to say that vaccination is the only way. No, vaccination of target groups will be very, very useful. Just for example, if you were to vaccinate all the, in collaboration with the National Union of Road Transport Workers, you were to vaccinate all the drivers and conductors that carry people across the city, both interstate and within the state, you will prevent the spread of this virus. If you were to select that group and vaccinate them, vaccinate hospital workers, shopkeepers, for example, where there is a lot of traffic. You select those groups and prioritize them. That's what we do with vaccination. We target those vulnerable groups and use it to contain the infection. That is the role of vaccines, and that's what we should do even in this pandemic. So to go across to start vaccinating all the 200 million people is a major paradigm shift, unproven in medicine, and might not be the correct path to go. We have to select the target groups and vaccinate those target groups because they are the portals, that's the corridor which it spreads to the general population. And that's what we should prioritize at this time.
Okay, now, would you say the vaccination has resulted in the drop in the use of face masks as we see recently?
Well, the use of face masks should be an independent way of disease prevention. Face masks are not necessary in open space outside because the transmissibility of the virus is really not there. But when you are in an ambient condition, that means in a room or in a hall, yes, there is the humidity there and the temperature there should not be here because we do air conditioning. When you do air condition a place, you reduce the humidity and you reduce the temperature, so there is a spread. So face masks will be helpful. And in closed space like vehicles, face masks are helpful. And even with vaccination, as at this time, we will not be able to suspend the use of face masks in this closed environment. It will still be useful to help contain the infection within closed environment because we still are studying what the immunity with vaccination looks like. We are not sure. Nobody really knows, not the companies that produce it, not the scientists. We can only observe this over time. The type of immunity we have with this and how it can sustain. How long does it last? Nobody can answer that question at this time. So that is why face masks will still be useful, especially in closed spaces.
All right, now, Prof, let's talk about the new variants of the virus springing up and doing damage in some countries. Is Nigeria doing enough? And what more should be done at this time to prevent these variants from coming in and ravaging the nation?
Yeah, it is very, very important, and I must commend the federal government for policing the borders much better. We had before this pandemic very porous borders, and I commend the Nigerian Immigration Service for what they have at least tried to retool and do so far. And I think they should do more, and I think we should enable them to do more. The traffic from countries like India must be contained, and we must be able to quarantine people. We have a lot of good relationship and business relationship, wide-ranging with India. So it is of heightened attention, and we should continue to police the borders. There is no other way to do this than to police the borders and make sure that those coming in, those target groups are either vaccinated or they are quarantined to observe so they will not take the virus into the community. So I think there's still a lot to be done, even though the federal government has fared very, very well in policing the borders so far.
Okay, and finally, before I let you go, Prof, we have seen a number of daily cases decline drastically. Is the virus going away, or are people no longer testing for the virus?
Well, I think that is the natural cause of viral diseases. When we have the flu season, that will go, there will be, the cases will peak, and at some point, people will start acquiring herd immunity. Even before we start the vaccinations for flu, the cases just taper off. So we should expect that to happen in this disease. I think is both that we are no more taking it very, very seriously in terms of testing, and the fact that the people are acquiring herd immunity to this, and the peak of the infection, probably we are just getting to that point.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Philip Njemanze, Professor of Neuroscience, for sharing your thoughts with us on COVID-19, the way forward, and conquering the virus.
Thank you very much for having me.
You're still watching Panorama on the network service of the NTA. We'll take a short break now. The Panorama will continue shortly.
Also known as COVID-19, has been declared by the World Health Organization as a global pandemic. While clinical trials are ongoing for a vaccine and a possible cure, there is no known treatment for the coronavirus. Nigeria has recorded some of these cases, and people are advised to take these preventive measures to keep themselves safe and contain the further spread of the virus. Wash your hands frequently with soap and water, or use hand sanitizers all the time. Maintain social distancing. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Practice respiratory hygiene. If you have fever, cough, and difficulty breathing, seek medical care early. Do not panic. Stop the spread of unconfirmed news. Follow the official government news outlets and report all cases immediately. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest television network.
Now to other issues. Governors on the platform of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, have called on the National Assembly to expedite action on the passage of the Electoral Act to ensure a free and fair election. This was part of the resolutions at a meeting in Ibadan. Ayomiku Ajibola has the details. Nigerian Labour Congress strike in Kaduna over the sack of workers enters day 2 with a commitment by the leadership of the union that its doors remain open for dialogue if invited by the Kaduna state government. This was while addressing workers at the state secretariat in Kaduna. Adamu Sunday reports.
Members of various labor unions carrying placards with different inscriptions converge on NLC Kaduna State Secretariat in continuation of their strike.
The issue is simple. You sack 7,700, reinstate them. You are planning to sack 11,000. Don't do that. Simple.
I'm calling the attention to the governor of Kaduna State to bring it into dialogue with the Nigerian Labour Congress so that they will have the next line of action.
Meanwhile, the law in socio-economic activities continues as a result of the NLC strike. Public power supply shut down, while schools, hospitals, train services, and Kaduna Airport remain closed. In Kaduna, Adamu Sunday, NTA News.
We now join our sports desk for more.